And, you know, I've argued this week and for years that the vast majority of EBT recipients don't really need it, that they're not going to starve to death without it, and that a large number of them are lazy. Like they don't want to put the work in, and they'd rather live off the system.
Why the hell would they ever buy into the system? Why would these people buy a house? Why would they get a job? Why would they pay their taxes if some Haitians are just going to be able to like come over and live much more royally than them? You can get lobster and caviar on food stamps. We've covered this. You can get truffles.
Why are people who weigh 300 pounds on SNAP? Is there no weight limit for a free food program in this country? Are you kidding me? Free food?
My next guest is putting forward a bill that would ban all non-citizens from any form of welfare. He posted to X, no food stamps, no Section 8 housing, no Medicaid, no cash assistance, not one penny. If you want some free stuff, go home. I love it. Congressman Randy Fine joins me now.
Well, I think bleeding heart liberalism led to bad policy. A lot of boo-hoo-hoo, I feel bad for people, but not actually thinking about the consequences of it, not thinking about the cost, the fraud, and the fact that you are going to make certain people reliant on the government for life. You showed some extraordinary clips of people who actually feel entitled to food stamps. No one is entitled to it. That is a gift that is given to you by your fellow taxpayers because you are unable to care for yourself. The only thing that we should hear when it comes to food stamps is gratitude and an admission that choices made in life led to the need for it. So when we hear people who expect it, then we know that we have a problem.
What's up, everybody? Major retired Richard Ojeda here. And did you hear about that Republican who barely won his seat in a special election not very long ago? That very same bloated buffoon was caught poking fun at poor, innocent people losing their access to SNAP benefits. Yeah, that sleazy, slimy, randy, not-so-fine congressman from Florida strutted himself onto the country's worst wannabe news station, Newsmax, to laugh at the marginalized and celebrate their misfortune with their own low-rent BS Barbie version of Caroline Leavitt.
And it's not just illegals getting these benefits, it's also legal immigrants getting these benefits. But if you're coming here, whether it's legally or illegally, to get free stuff, you ought to stay home. Immigrants ought to be self-reliant. If they aren't, we shouldn't be letting them into our country.
Fine was as giddy as a crackhead with a benefits calculator, smirking and fidgeting around like he couldn't contain his excitement. And while Randy Fine is out here wetting his pants like an excited little dog, people are losing their SNAP benefits that keep them and their families from literally starving.
You shouldn't be allowed to get food stamps if you're dramatically overweight. In what universe do morbidly obese people get to pretend that they need taxpayer-funded meals? It's obvious so many of the people that are complaining right now need to eat dramatically less if they want to live much longer.
And while this pathetic loser, this worm of a human being, is out here shaming hungry, hardworking families, kids, the elderly, and the disabled, Saturday Night Live's Michael Che is calling the whole thing what it really is, really effed up. And he's absolutely right. And once again, we hear the same tired racist chorus coming from these MAGA politicians, the ones who mock the poor and worship the rich while calling it patriotism. Think about that. You don't have to look far to find some moral degenerate online celebrating people losing their SNAP benefits and going hungry. Che pointed out exactly who they're targeting. Black families, black inner city communities, because that's where we are right now. A country where cruelty has become entertainment for the undereducated MAGA crowd. Isn't that something? The irony just writes itself. Think about it. The first immigrants who ever set foot on this soil showed up here starving, freezing, half dead. The Pilgrims, the ones we dress our kids up like every Thanksgiving, and we're getting ready to celebrate that again, right? Who saved them from dying? Was it Donald Trump, Randy Fine, Stephen Miller, Lauren Boebert? Nope. It was the same people whose descendants these MAGA clowns would call illegals today. The native tribes took pity on these poor, pathetic, starving, anemic pilgrims. They fed them. They taught them how to plant corn, to hunt, how to survive. And what did they get in return? Genocide, smallpox, their land stolen, their people slaughtered, missing and murdered indigenous women ignored every single day, their culture nearly erased. That's the real American origin story. So when Randy Fine sits there running his nasty pie hole about who belongs in this country, maybe he ought to remember that the first undocumented immigrants to arrive here came on the Mayflower. And this nation only exists because the people who were already here chose mercy and instead of the hate in which he attunes himself to.
I wonder the extent to which on conservative media that message is being echoed, or how they are justifying To Basil's point about the fact that this is a lot of Trump's own supporters who are being impacted by this, how they are explaining that away.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way they look at it is in a few dimensions. One, they never acknowledge the reality, right, that it's going to be a lot of their own supporters. Even though they all kind of know it, they never actually acknowledge that. So it's basically the notion that it's liberals and black people that are getting this program predominantly. So to some extent, they're happy. There's a lot of schadenfreude, and they're leaning into the cruelty, that there's a whole bunch of people that don't get it, that they don't like, that are going to be punished. And on the flip side, some of the sort of soft undercurrent, and you sort of got to that in your messaging, is that, yeah, there are going to be some of their people that are going to suffer from this. And to an extent, they're perfectly fine with that, as long as they know that and that they can convince their people that it's Democrats at fault.
And that tells you everything you need to know about these people and who they are. They mock the hungry. They mock the hungry and pretend cruelty is patriotism. It's part of a system that's been screwing working people over forever. First and foremost, let's talk about the minimum wage. $7.25 an hour. I don't care if you're working 40 hours a week. That is not enough to keep your nose above the waterline. You can't raise a family on that. You can't pay rent, buy food, or put gas in your car with that. And our government could change it tomorrow. They could raise it to $21 an hour, which is what it should be. That's not radical, that's reality. Because if wages had gone up with the cost of living like they were supposed to, we'd be sitting at $26 an hour right now. But the Republican Party refuses to do that. The only reason anyone's making more than $7.25 is because individual states stepped up and raised their minimum wage. The federal government hasn't done a damn thing for working class people. And you want to know why SNAP exists? Because people can't survive on starvation wages. SNAP isn't a luxury. It's a difference between your kids going to bed hungry and your kids having food inside their stomachs. And you've got rich white politicians like Randy Fine mocking people who rely on that help. People who are just trying to survive. These folks have never once struggled to pay a bill. Never once had to choose between buying groceries or paying the light bill. But they'll get it on TV and act like poverty is a choice. No, poverty is the result of policy. It's a system designed to keep the rich comfortable while the poor fight for scraps. You ever really struggle? I mean, really struggle? Because if you haven't, you don't get to judge the people who do. And yet these politicians make careers out of it. They tell their base that poor people are lazy and they're leeches, that they just want handouts. But let's get one thing straight. People on SNAP are working. They're working 2, sometimes 3 jobs and still can't make enough to survive. Look at what's happened in this country, especially in communities of color. Years ago, they went into the inner cities and killed vocational education. They stripped out the programs that could have trained kids to become electricians, welders, mechanics, HVAC techs, jobs that pay well and build futures. They ripped opportunity right out of those schools. You think that was an accident? No, it was by design, because keeping people poor keeps them powerless. And that's what Michael Che was talking about. He called it really effed up. And he's right. He grew up on food stamps. He knows what it's like to stand in line for powdered milk. He knows what it's like to hear politicians mock people who don't have enough. It's not funny, it's cruel. But cruelty is the point for these people. They want you angry at the wrong people, angry at the poor, the immigrant, the single mom, instead of billionaires who's robbing you blind. Why shouldn't inner city kids want to be mechanics, welders, or plumbers? There's pride in that work, but those opportunities got gutted, just like they did in poor white communities across Appalachia. The deck's been stacked against working class people for decades. When I graduated high school, I had 3 options: sell dope, dig coal, or join the military. Half my family were coal miners. My grandfather died in a mining collapse. That's not a future. That's a death sentence. Selling drugs wasn't a future either. I saw where that road led. So I joined the military because that was the only way out. And if I hadn't, I probably would have been stuck working retail or flipping burgers for a corporation that doesn't give a damn about me or my family. That's the story for millions of Americans. People who work their asses off, who do everything right, and still can't get ahead. They're not lazy. They're trapped in a system system built to keep them desperate. And then you've got these rich politicians turning around and calling them freeloaders. These people couldn't survive a week on what the average working class American makes, yet they act like they're the moral authorities on hard work. You ever notice that these are the ones screaming the loudest about personal responsibility? They're always the ones born on third base acting like they hit a triple. They've never seen a shutoff notice, never had a car repossessed, never worked a double job just to buy school clothes for their kids, but they sure love to point fingers at those who have. You want to fix this? Then make Walmart pay $21 an hour. Make Walmart, one of the richest corporations in the world, take care of its employees instead of dumping that responsibility on taxpayers. Because when Walmart doesn't pay fair wages or provide health care, it's the American people who foot the bill. That's corporate welfare, plain and simple. And that shit needs to stop. And let's be clear, this crisis we're in right now, it's Republican made. Donald Trump and his cronies are out here trying to use food assistance as a political weapon. They're threatening to take food away from people's tables unless Democrats cave on a bill that would strip 22 Americans of their health care. 22 million Americans. That's not governing. That's extortion. That's cruelty dressed up as policy. Democrats cannot fold because if they do, millions lose health care. And if Republicans fold, guess what? Then regular people actually win. People get to keep their health care. That's what terrifies them, because helping ordinary Americans doesn't fit their agenda. So yeah, they're holding SNAP hostage, pretending like starving kids is some kind of political strategy. But there will come a day when that laughter stops, and the very people he's been mocking, they'll be the ones sitting on that jury of his so-called peers holding his ass accountable. Because what he's doing and what every one of them like him is doing isn't politics. It's criminal. And that's a fact. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.